Welcome to another episode of Behind the Strategy, a place for conversations, a place to find out and reveal all. What is behind your strategy? And in this episode, wow, do I have a treat speaking to Jenny Kovacs for the second time in the same century. How about that? Jenny, welcome.
Hello. I don't know why I've got my glasses on. I only need them for reading, but hello, everyone.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for being here. Now, this is not our first time doing a podcast together. And last time we realized, crikey, do we have a lot to talk about? So thank you so much for coming back and just carrying on conversations, but with a really nice gap in between, because if either of us haven't learned anything in that time, what the hell are we doing, eh?
Exactly. More to talk about and
More to talk about.
Lovely listeners as well.
Exactly. Now, Jenny is the Visibility Queen. She's absolute expert. But I want to ask you a question, Jenny. So with your experience of testing things out, with your expertise, and with your experience of working with others as well, I'm going to ask you about the core values, which may or may not have come up in conversations when you're working with people. But underneath, because you're the expert, how much do core values impact somebody's fear, nervousness, or reluctance to be visible?
It's everything. I mean, in the professional or personal development world, coaching industry and all of that, people talk a lot about limited beliefs. What they don't talk about, sadly, are beliefs that empower us as well. But people often forget about our values. It's the reason why we see people, they might be well known, they might have huge audiences, and we just don't resonate with them. We don't like them. It's not the right kind of thing to do. And I think people forget that. So in terms of values, when it comes to being visible, our values are really, as you know, what we hold dear to be true. It's like almost like the opposite end of the belief stick. But because we hold them so dear and value them so deeply to be true, if I am working with somebody and let's say you and I start working together and I tell you that you have to do something in a certain way, you might think, oh, it's because of my personality or something else. But actually, it normally hits on your values. Number one, I'd be out of alignment because I don't believe in telling people that they have to do anything. In fact, a lot of the work I do is about looking at how people best, how to get the best out of them and letting them align with who they actually are. So me telling somebody what to do is not how I've ever worked. I've been doing this for 14 years and I've tested this out. It's tried and tested in so many different ways. And the other thing is, I think it's important for people to understand their own values so that it's those that can shine. Because if they don't, they feel that visibility is a thing that they have to do. They feel forced in going out there in the world. And then they either procrastinate on it, they feel overwhelmed, they get out of integrity and they don't do it. And the other thing is that what I've seen, it's the biggest cause of burnout. Now, I'm not a burnout specialist, I'm not a doctor, but when you're being told, whether it's by yourself or by somebody else, to do something that you're not in full alignment with, even if you're not consciously aware of that, you will burn out quickly. Whereas if you're kind of going through doing stuff in your purpose, aligned with your values, you can literally do it for 24 hours a day without sleeping or eating or drinking water. So it's really, really important.
Now, this raises a couple of things for me. So firstly, one of the fears I had was, and it's probably the same for anybody out there, being visible. I love doing videos. I love getting out there, but I still have a fear of being judged. Now, I know that because I have ADHD brain, obviously I'm going to feel that as well as part of the symptoms, but that doesn't apply to just my brain. It applies to people across the board. So I want to put that out there as well, that even though I come from a place of, in this conversation, talking about the perspective of somebody with ADHD, which is incredibly crippling when we feel judged, it is the same for anybody, right?
Oh.
Now, when I ask myself, why is that? Right? Because I actually don't mind going out on video. So I'm quite possibly typical of people who are doing things that they don't feel aligned with. Okay. Because that's the point I'm getting at. So people are just doing it, putting on a brave face, putting on some makeup. Hope everyone did notice I have got the curls in today. Although you can't see that on audio, but actually, if you're listening, I have beautiful hair today. It's absolutely stunning. Just thought I'd say.
Me too.
Exactly. The pair of us are just sitting here glowing. Oh my gosh. And that's the beauty of audio, isn't it? But the fact is, we are doing this on video. You may not, you may be watching this further down the line. And we're both still conscious of what we look like before we come on, because we want to present to the world. And I mentioned to you as well, it's not just about what we look like to others. I mentioned to you before you even started, I have to have my hair like this because I can't look at myself all the time. I'll be distracted. Now, that's personal. That's down to self-image, self-worth, all the blah, blah, blah things, right? Because we all go through times of where that's strong or not. And the way I see it is I just embrace it, fix it, solve it, so that I'm not prevented from doing things like this. If it works, that's fine. It doesn't matter what I think, what we do. We all have bad hair days. Just knowing what makes sense doesn't make things doable, does it?
So it's interesting because I'm going to answer that. I'm going to answer it through the question that you were asking me about being judged or feeling judged. I
Yeah.
think what some people forget is that when we are being judged, I'm not one of these that say, oh no, it must be in your imagination. You need to take it out. No, when
Oh,
we are being judged all the time, we're being watched
yes.
all the time. I think the
Yes.
difference is what we do with it. So, for example, I came on here and I was explaining that I'd been running. My hair was like really statically charged, and then I thought, but if this is going to be a video interview, I didn't go. I can't turn up and look a mess because oh my gosh, what will people think? I actually thought I want to do the best job for Kate because one of my values is whether I'm speaking, whether I'm working with somebody, whether I'm a guest on their podcast or their interview, I want them to be seen as, oh, absolutely amazing. Oh my gosh, this person they brought on. So for
Yeah.
me, fixing my hair up meant that it takes away any kind of, if somebody's watching this, oh my gosh, what's wrong with her hair thing? It gets that out of the way, has me
Yes.
show up for you. So
Yeah.
in being judged, and especially when it comes, or specifically when it comes to visibility, we can worry about judging ourselves. That's the kind of imposter syndrome stuff.
Yeah.
We judge ourselves and compare ourselves to what we might have been before or what we could be, or that we're not further along and all of that. We also get stopped by the judging of others. Now, the judging of others might be something that we've become accustomed to or conditioned to because maybe our parents or brothers or sisters or cousins or friends at school were judgmental. So it could be from ourselves, it could be from other people. And then some of it leaks into the fears that we perceive. Maybe we've seen somebody else be judged. The difference will
Yeah.
be when it comes to visibility and being judged, whether we do it or not depends on us. So if something had happened, my hairbrush had gone missing, my hair was an absolute mess, I would come on and I would say, I've been running, my hair's a mess, can't find my brush, but don't let this stop you. Whereas somebody else, and you may have experienced this, might have sent you a quick message, so sorry, family emergency, or I'm really ill today. I just
Yeah.
can't, I can't, I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule this?
Yes. And I wouldn't know the real reason, would I really?
Exactly. And we
Yeah.
see this a lot, especially with adults. Children will just go, I don't want to do it. But adults, having sort of judged themselves and other people, they will kind of, I guess, create an acceptable reason. I'm so sorry, something's happened, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
So that's where I think being judged is really super important. It's the difference for some of us between whether we do or whether we don't. And
Yes.
in my experience, I get to see behind the scenes of people. They'll tell me their hopes and fears, and they could be like executives and big CEOs of companies that I've worked with, people that are well known, and
Yeah.
they'll whisper in my ear, "Oh my gosh, this, I really hate doing this,"
Yeah.
which is always surprising. And then, I've worked with people who have been single business owners who they're great at what they do, but they didn't really sign up for, oh, I'm a great, I don't know, mathematician that helps children. But they didn't sign up for having to be here, there, and everywhere like a public figure. So it can take some adjusting, and depending on our own judgments and how we think about it, depends on A, how we show up, B, if we show up, and C, whether we kind of like decide to stop ourselves or carry on. Does that make sense?
Total sense. Total sense. And I guess the natural progression of, to go from here is about where those fears are coming from. So
Mm.
one hand, we might have just be thrown into a situation that we weren't prepared for. So quite often we learn how to manage that, don't we? And we come up with ways. Those are easier ways to come up with, even if we're feeling judged. There's always going to be something that might override that. So let's say somebody might think, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to show up at this opening of the envelope
Mm.
because otherwise I won't get clients and I'll be taken. Nobody's going to like me. They're going to think I'm a flake because it's a very public thing. And that might be what they don't want to be seen as incompetent or whatever reason. We don't want to be seen as something, right?
Well,
So, and I also go back further than that. So, why don't we want to be seen as that? That is what I believe comes from our core values. So, in every episode, I talk about the different core values that I have. There's honesty, respect, acceptance, and fun. Okay,
well,
those are the real four ones that I have because without those, four core ones at the top, I can't function. I just can't function, right?
mm,
But there are also other core values. Now those are mine that I have come from and worked out myself. And it was only actually recently I worked out the fun one because
well,
I just thought, well, how can that be a core value? Surely that's something that's not professional. It's a bit frivolous. And it's like, well, somebody told me that I'm always making jokes, that I'm always making people laugh. I come out with the stupidest things and I'm unapologetically just blur. and and also I'm not doing it for effect. This was really kind of them, I have to say. And I can only say it out loud now because I've got over myself, quite frankly, because
mm,
we should be able to say these things. And I thought, do you know what? When I was younger, I wanted people to see me as having a good sense of humor. I wanted people to think I was funny. I loved making people laugh. And it wasn't just the people pleasing thing of the ADHD. Sometimes if I made, it was down to getting out of situations quite often, if you can ridiculise something. But what more than that, I didn't want to be seen as incompetent or out of control. And when I go back to all of them, it goes back to being out of control. And when I say, where does that come from? Well, it comes from values that I was taught growing up
mm.
because we have to be, we're in school. I'm sure, you've been to school, Jenny.
I've not, unfortunately.
I know. Were you told to sit still, behave, listen, and learn?
Yes,
Right.
all of the above.
Right. We were controlled, Pink
Well,
Floyd, all in all, just another brick in the wall because we can't get no education. I love that. That is the song for this one. The thing is, it is all about control. We are controlled growing up, and at the same time, we're told that creativity is to be something that's, we want to have creativity. We want to have something that we're good at.
well,
And there's so many things that we are told growing up, and then we're thrown into situations of, oh, good Lord, I'm an adult. Crikey. It's like, I'm not doing the adulting. How do I pretend that I am? And we start to, I would say we start to shift and change those boundaries so we don't get rid of those core values because we think they have to be there. an assumption, limiting belief. So we try and this is where we quite often, I think, get into trouble, is where we try and bend the rules, break the rules, because we haven't worked out yet that they weren't our core values.
Yeah. We conform, don't we? Because
Yeah.
we think we have to. It's interesting because, and again, I'm not the expert on this, in terms of people being discovered with late kind of discovery of ADHD, for example. We go through life where I think we wear certain masks.
Yeah.
So I think the controlling environment, and this is not to say that everyone's had that experience at school, but a more controlled environment, you have to get there at a certain time. You've got a timetable. It's a certain amount of kind of, and I think people learn how to either fit into those environments. And in order to fit in, they have to conform, like you were saying about kind of being funny. And then other times they just completely rebel because it's too much for them. So what's interesting about you talking about fun being one of your values, I never thought I was particularly funny. And it was only a bit later on when we started looking at values for ourselves and, companies and things like that, that I realized I was one of these people. Let's say I was late for school, and there's lots of different examples, but let's say I was late for school. In fact, I'll tell you a true life example. Can you remember those anorak things, parkas we used to have?
Yes.
The ones that used to zip up with the fairy,
Yes.
the green or the blue.
Oh, yes.
One day I went to school and I did leave a little bit later than I should have done, and it was raining and windy, so I zipped it all the way up. So there's like this whole furry,
Oh,
sounds wrong,
love
furry
it.
spool at the front.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just made myself laugh saying that. So I got to
I'm
school.
sniggering.
I get to registration, and it's all right because although I'm a few minutes late, I'm in registration, so I can get away with it. I walk into the class, I'm dripping wet, and I go to unzip my hood, and the zip's stuck. I have to sit down at my desk, like, and looking through this little hole. The kids are cracking up laughing. I mean, I was worried because I'm like, I'm going to get into trouble. I'm late. I'm going to get detention. I have to write line. And I'm cracking them up. I think even the teacher found it funny. Registration, like the teacher's trying to undo the zip. I'm trying to undo the zip. The kids are trying to.
Oh my God.
None of us could do it. And they were all laughing about it. So number one, like situation, crisis averted. I didn't even get into trouble for being late. Everyone thought it was hilarious, and everyone thought, you're so funny. And I didn't mean to be funny.
Yes.
By the time I managed to get out of my self-imposed code trap, I'm kind of like simmering down. It's probably gone to like the next 2 or 3 lessons now. And I'm saying, really seriously, I had such a nightmare this morning. I was late. It was raining. The wind was blowing when I got into the class, and everyone's cracking up again. You're hilarious. And there were so many other times through my life where I'd be explaining something like, oh my gosh, this thing's happened, and people are wetting themselves, cracking up laughing. And I'm just thinking, oh, well, this is interesting. I wasn't expecting that, but it seemed to calm everybody down. And this went on into my corporate life. I'd tell a story about something or relay things, and everyone, directors, managing directors, would go, oh, Jenny, you are so funny. You're so engaging. You're so hilarious. Yeah, I didn't see that in myself. So I don't know what kind of value that I would attach to that. There was an honesty. And it's almost like, I'm going to sound very woo-woo here, but I don't apologize. It's like they could feel my heart. Whereas if I'd come from a place of, I was late this morning, don't ask, don't talk about my coat, don't talk about anything, I feel like they would have felt that. So from a young age, it almost felt very intuitive.
Yeah.
It was like whatever things came out because of the situation, even though I didn't mean them to. So I feel like sometimes the conformity shows us that, and the control and all of that, whether it's from parents or friends or schools or work, or, unfortunately, things like being in a bullying work culture, all of those things, they teach us stuff. And in the running analogy, I like to think of it this way. When I was training to do the marathon, and anyone listening to this, like, calm down, because I'm not a runner. Even still, I did the
No, I
marathon.
remember I've been championing you and following you and all the likes and crikey, we're not worthy, we're not worthy.
7.5 hours it took me. I'd love to say I did it in under 3 or 4. 7.5 hours it took me. I think I could have walked
That's
quicker.
perseverance. That's determination, isn't it?
It
That
is.
is determination.
But what people don't tell you is, on the day of the marathon, for many, many of us, well, especially when you're a non-runner trying to finish a marathon, like, this weird thing happens. And even in the week before it, you get this form of nervousness where you cry at the drop of a hat, you laugh at the drop of the hat. It's really strange.
Very
And,
emotional.
and it is very emotional. And the day before, the thing that calmed me down, I was in this Facebook group, and I, shared, everyone else was running marathons as well. And people said things like, or somebody said, I have done this before. Think of the marathon, like, through all of your training, you're ready for this. Think of the marathon as your victory lap.
Oh, okay. That's cool. Yeah, I
It's
like that
cool.
perspective. Yeah,
In
yeah,
that
yeah.
moment, I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
So then I was able to enjoy it. Now, the reason I bring this up is because all of that bullying that you've gone through, chastising, people judging you, feeling controlled, like, that is your training for the thing you're doing now, whether you've got a business or not. If you are a road sweeper, you're doing the very best job of sweeping that road based
Yeah.
on the training that you've had. And when people, aren't so kind to you or are very kind to you, all of that is the training, which means the thing that we're lightly landed in doing now is our victory lap. And I don't think people often think about what they value or hold dear or don't value, how it can cause success.
That is, yes, that, and what that makes me think of is that when I was driving double-decker buses around Oxford, because I had a burnout and decided to just right, that's it, bad enough. I don't want to travel around the world anymore. I've had enough traveling around the world and doing all the la-di-dum things. And I was doing a lot of conflict mediation. I mean, I had to go to Mexico at one point and for conflict mediation, with talking to the Minister of Sports. And I had the biker gang were my support, because, and that's accepted over there. Do you know what I mean? You have to have protection and, talking about all these things that I've done. I just thought, where am I? What am I doing? I was enjoying it. I loved it. But so I found the job driving the buses. Now, I've always prided myself, right, Jenny? I've always prided myself on being an excellent driver. Always. Right? I've always liked to be the one that didn't have people going, "Oh, can you slow down?" Or, "Oh, stop jerking the car." I always wanted to be the best. In fact, I always like to be the best at everything I do, except I do know, as I've grown older, that I can't be. Right? And that isn't just because I'm not capable, folks. It's because I've decided I probably don't want to. I'm just going to leave it there, right? So I decided, so I learned, and then when I first took the driving test, there was, they said it was no problem. I could drive, everybody would be fine. I was so nervous about taking this test, even though I had been driving this bus around anyway, that first of all, I failed the first one because I drove up to a red light, and then when it went green, I didn't go anywhere, and I didn't see it go green and go red. So right at the very beginning, I failed, and I didn't even know, right? So I've obviously carried on. We've gone round some back roads, and the examiner said, I need you to turn right here. And so what I did was I turned left, and I took this bus down this little country road and ended up having to do one of those Austin Powers, like 100 million turns with a double-decker bus on a tiny little road in front of gates of this big house. And it was just hysterical. And he did say to me, just don't worry, let's just get this situation out of it, because going the wrong way, you don't fail, right? I was like, oh, fine. Did not realizing I'd already failed. Anyway, when I got back and I realised I'd failed, that was fine. And then I passed the next one. And in the ensuing months, I realised that I didn't have any major serious accidents, I have to say, thank goodness. I was very, very careful, very mindful. The passengers are the most important. but there were a few wing mirrors and bus stops that got a few dents. Okay. So
Sorry, I can.
I realized, I realized I wasn't perhaps the best driver, but did that stop me? No, because I still had to I found a way of how to still excel at something, right? What I didn't know going on behind the scenes, so we're coming up now to the first year.
Okay.
What I didn't realize going on behind the scenes was that there were awards for customer service, right? Which didn't even occur to me. I didn't even read all the small print, right?
Well,
And people were sending in letters. Actually writing emails, which most people don't, saying how brilliant I was and how great I was as a driver and how thankful and helpful and supportive. I didn't know any of this was all going on. And I won this award for customer service, got a little badge and everything. And I was just being me because I wanted to give everybody the best possible experience. It was just, I wanted to make sure, still took those values with me. Yes, I'm sorry if you think I'm taking longer. I know I'm running a bit late, but I'm sorry. I'm going to make sure that somebody's getting on safely or sitting down. I'm going to follow the rules. I did all the things. What that did do was then it then fueled into me, like, I'm going to get it next year as well. and I actively did it again because I then pulled out all the stops. And that's a really interesting situation to be in, because was it better I did it from the heart without knowing? Or was it better that once I did know, I still did it from the heart and just tried to do it better? And that's because one of my core values is that I just want everyone to have a pleasant time in life. None of us like conflict. That's why I mentioned about the conflict at the start, talking about going over to different countries and stuff. Conflict negotiation is something I've always been very good at. From a child, learning to laugh or ridiculise or being able to break things down so people can understand it without feeling patronised, I guess. And because it's really important, because that puts your hackles up. And I think at the end of the day, all our fears, being judged, being, for whatever reason, being visible online, taking opportunities, I think it stems from the fact that we don't want conflict with other people. We don't want it in our minds. We don't want it in our hearts. And I think we forget that, don't we? Because we're sometimes so campaigning on what's right. We forget by doing that, in its very nature of doing that, we're creating conflict, which then puts us in another situation that we have to sort out, feeling judged again.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's like almost like positive surrender, if there's such a thing. And I think sometimes we hit up against like the different bumps in the road, pardon the pun. But we hit different bumps in the road in life, and we're so determined that we're going to do it, we're going to pass it, we're going to do something. It actually gets in the way of the experience of just letting it go, surrendering to it, and having a better experience. So I love the story that you told with the bus thing. You reminded me of something that I'd completely forgotten about, in that when I first learnt to drive, I was 19. I was actually 17 and then burnt my hand as a chef. That's another story for another time. But at 19, I took about 3 lessons a week. And I remember saying to my driving instructor, I'm ready, I'm ready. Oh, have a few more lessons. No, I'm ready, I'm ready. And then him telling me that him and his wife were saving for a caravan. So I thought, yeah, you want your caravan out of me. Anyway,
yeah,
I go for my test, and I'm really, really nervous, really nervous. I'm so nervous, and I'm taking my test in Peterborough, which anyone that knows Peterborough, it's got a gazillion roundabouts everywhere.
wow.
Most people used to choose not to take it there.
A bit like Swindon.
We've come out of the test centre, we're going up to the first roundabout, and a bit similar to you, he said, if at the next roundabout you can turn right. In my head, I heard left. So I moved over and I was getting ready. I was about to kind of get ready to turn left. I thought, he said right. I thought, oh, damn, I failed this. Oh, well. I looked, made sure it was safe, pulled over, went in the right-hand lane, turned right. And at the end of the driving test, he said, I'm really pleased to tell you that you've passed. He said, You were so
Wow.
nervous at the beginning. He said, I asked you to turn right and you started to turn left. He said, but you corrected yourself really safely. He said, but
Oh,
from that
great.
moment, I realized that you thought you'd failed. He said, because you just relaxed and you just followed the instructions and you got on with it. So it actually kind of was your saving
Freed
grace.
you up, yeah.
Freed me up. And then madly, I went and did I got my motorbike license years
Huh.
later, which was equally as stressful and me thinking, this. But you're right. In everything that you've learned before, you bring it to the table, and it does affect how we are moving forward, And I love that you were kind of customer service person of the year, because of course you were. It's about bringing your whole self to everything that you do. When you bring your whole self to everything that you do, it's almost impossible to have the imposter syndrome. But when you're trying to bring a false self, so if you're turning up online trying to be like Oprah, act like Stephen Bartlett, and all of the other people that are very kind of well known out there, that's where your mismatch is. Your values aren't
Yeah.
aligning, and you end up doing a half kind of attempt job at what you could have done because you're just not in alignment with yourself. It's as simple as that to say it, but that's what really kind of causes it, I think.
Yeah, and the thing is online as well, there is so much advice.
Yes.
So much advice
Overwhelming.
from everywhere and everyone, and even people that we know, like, and trust. They might be the most loveliest people. Most people are. Let's just face it.
Oh,
Most people are really lovely people. I mean, in my experience, obviously not everybody is, but most people are in a
well,
percentage. And if you're in an environment where you're seeing a lot where it's not, it's actually misrepresented in real life,
well,
right? Because it's a false scenario being online than it is when you go out and you're working in a factory or a shop or on the shop floor. It's completely different. The percentages of how many people would say this or do this completely changed,
yeah,
um, and so it's a bit of a false thing. But so we followed different advice because, well, we just believe it, because people are nice, and those people, things have worked for them, and they're working for some of the people they work with. But what we don't always see is that they don't always work for everyone, and I think that's something that's not talked about very often, and
well,
that is. And I know that you've experienced this because you are a coach from the heart for whatever you've done, and not every single person that I've ever worked with has had the results they want.
mm,
And there's a lot of people who won't say that, or they don't want to say that, or they'll say it in a, oh, look how humble I am. And I don't mean it like that. What I'm saying is the reason is because what I can see could work can only be done from my perspective. I can see their perspective. One of the skills I have is being able to see different perspectives, but I can't possibly get it right 100% of the time.
well,
How is that possible within itself?
well,
And it's how we manage those expectations within ourselves. Are we somebody who wants to that thinks that we can only put out positive testimonials? I mean, sometimes yes, if you're trying to sell something, or you could do what I did, and you could do a make a joke of one
well,
testimonial on a page for a sales page where I have a wait list, and somebody who is one of my clients actually, and she said, yeah, join the wait list. I don't quite know what I'm waiting for, but I'm sure it's going to be fun. Or something a bit tongue in cheek. Or, hey, another one said, my God, I've been on this wait list forever. Is anyone out there? Could someone help me? And that was the testimonial. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is the testimonial in itself, isn't it?
mm. I think you're
And
right. I think you're
yeah,
right. 'Cause, like, on the doing the right thing, there is a lot of smoke and mirrors online, and I have seen where people purport to be or do one thing online, and then you meet them in real life, and you're like, oh, you just assume they're going to be the same. There is that, but my belief actually is that everything works. Everything that everybody teaches works. It's
yep,
up to us to discern um, whether that's kind of like whether it fits with us in terms of our values, and if it fits with us, then that's the thing for us to do. But it doesn't mean that that is the only way to do it. Sometimes we need a couple of different shots at it. So I really like that you said that, because one of the things that I shared very recently, I think I scared people. I was like, oh, I've had a bit of bad news. It's not too bad. But
Yeah.
I outed myself. And like, even at the time of recording, this has happened within the last week.
Wow.
I have helped people to get past the pitch for their TED Talks. And I think you and I had talked about it even in Clubhouse
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
I've helped a number of people get there, get past the pitch. And once you get into TEDx, not TED, but TEDx, you've got people that help to hone your speaking and stuff like that. And because everybody in my world seems to do a TED Talk, I've never been like, I want to do one, because if everyone else is doing it, it kind of puts me off. I think that's just my
Yeah.
stuff. So everyone's writing a book, everyone's doing this. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. And then somebody tagged me in a post, I'd say a couple of months ago now, and said, oh, Jenny, you'd be good for this. And it was a TED Talk quite close to where I am. So I thought, yeah, let me think about the topic. Have I got an idea worth sharing and all of that? And I applied, and I left it to the last minute, and I definitely overthought it. I think I put in a bad pitch. And I'd said
Yeah.
that in the day. And the short version is that evening I got the email, you haven't been successful. And I was like, oh, I wasn't gutted. It's not like my life purpose to do one. But I was like, oh, I'm really disappointed.
Yeah.
And then my brain went to, I'm disappointed. I've helped so many people get through. Oh my gosh, no one's going to want to work with me now about kind of pitching or anything else like that. And then I just went, no, because I'm going into the point where I feel ashamed. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I put a post out. I didn't say what it was, but I felt like I want to speak about it. I want to get it out in the open. So I put a post, and like, luckily I know what to do. I said, had a bit of a disappointment, nothing major. So I'm going to journal on it. I'm going to watch a bit of rubbish TV. I'm going to eat something nice, and I'm going to have a little cheeky gin and tonic. I'm not going to
Oh,
drink a vat of it, just
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So I put it out there, and I said, I'm going to come back tomorrow and explain a bit more. Anyway, this was like less than 12 hours later. In that time, I am part of a writing group. And in the writing group, I'd explained what happened. I said, it's one of those things, it's disappointed, but I want to talk about it, because here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to go into the myth of this online shame that people seem to go into. I kind of want to out myself. I don't want it to be a dirty little secret. I don't have to tell anyone that it ever happened, but I feel
No.
like it's important, because for me, integrity is doing the thing, saying the thing, being the thing, even when somebody would never find out or they can't see. So one of the reframes I had in that short amount of time was, the person said to me, you might think it's a bad pitch, but you might have pitched that to a different TEDx, organization who might have lapped it up. So don't be saying the pitch was a bad pitch. I thought it was a weak pitch. It was confusing and all this kind of stuff. So I thought, well, that was a good reframe. And then I outed myself. I did the video. I've put it as a public video. And in the back of my mind, oh, what if somebody from TED sees it and they tell me to take it down? What if they think it's sour grapes? What if they're like, well, yes, we shouldn't have had that woman in there, because, I didn't slate anybody. I just talked about my experience. But I said, it's okay to sometimes not be successful at stuff. It is okay. Let's ditch the shame. Let's stop hiding when things don't go well. Let's talk about that as well. So I think it's a really important thing to do online. And when people meet me in person, hopefully they'll also see, oh my gosh, you're exactly the same as you are online. You're no different. I don't want them to have one experience of me because I'm trying to be all shiny and polished over here, and then a different experience because I'm trying to, keep up with the Joneses or anything. But you know what? So many people sent me messages kind of saying, thank you for saying that. A couple of people sent me messages going, it's okay, Jenny, you'll be able to apply again. I'm kind of not bothered.
Yeah, no, I
Yes.
get the fact. I get the not bothered bit. I do. I get that, and I think you've raised a really really good point. In fact, that by default, with you doing that and
Mm,
wanting to share that type of conversation on it, you've helped people who aren't able to.
mm,
They're not in that place yet, or they're not somebody who perhaps finds it easy to do that. They might do it in a different way, or and that's okay too. And what you were saying in your conversations, and this is why I wanted to do this type of podcast about the conversations that we should be having, is
mm.
we don't have to go out there and bare all and bare our soul and put ourselves out there. Vulnerability is um I think it's thrown around quite a lot. You were feeling vulnerable because you could tell that that shame might have kicked in. You recognised all that, and I think quite a lot of the time people do, and then oh, but I should. Somebody else might have thought, oh, but I better go out and I better tell people about it for a completely different reason for you. Oh, I'm
Good.
doing this to show how vulnerable I am. I mean, that's a completely different perspective,
Mm,
and people can tell. And I think what I like to talk about is that actually most people are a little bit more discerning. We're pretty savvy. Most people are quite savvy.
mm,
But the thing is, most of us are not savvy all the time because
mm.
the amount of money we've all spent on things we didn't need, we thought we needed, we followed, we've done. We've all been there, we've all done it,
Oh,
and we're all going to do things like you've just spoken about, which is, um, an important thing to a lot of people, and it's not as important to others. I kept thinking about it. Oh, I love doing speaking. I
oh.
absolutely love doing speaking, but for me to think about doing the TEDx thing and having to do it in that conformity way, now I
Yes.
know other ADHDers might like that. That might work really well for them, and I know it does.
Mm.
But for me, I'm not motivated. The accolade of doing it, the seeing that it doesn't actually motivate me
Do you know
enough.
what, though?
You know
You've
what I
just
mean?
hit the nail on the head, because the reason that I decided, because I could have been tagged in it and gone, no, still everyone's doing it. The reason I decided, I, I kind of a bit like the marathon. I can't run a marathon. Let me give it a go. I wanted the experience of being totally out of my comfort zone. I speak a lot. I've been
Yes,
speaking for like years, even
you
before I
have.
did this.
Yes.
I weirdly, I don't know if I'm a sadist or something. I wanted the experience of being outside of my comfort zone, having to apply for something, then having to write a script, having to memorize it. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember what I had to eat 2 nights ago. But I've got to now stand there for 15 minutes, and having seen kind of inside, they don't have a teleprompter. So you have to write a script. You've got a script writer on a few of these going, no, not good enough, let's shape it some more. Then you have to remember it, and then you have to deliver it, and you've got a certain amount of time. All of those things added up. I was like, I would hate that, so I'm going to go
Yeah.
for it. That's what made
Yeah.
me do
I
it. So
love
that
that.
is
I love
exactly
that.
why. And the other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to say was, the other reason that I wanted to talk about it. Obviously, I talked about, I don't want other people to feel guilt or shame, but like, come on now. And again, with the greatest of respect to TED and TEDx, people got really bad news on Friday, like properly bad news. Some people somewhere in the world got bad prognosis, heard about horrible things to their family. Some people heard about people that just didn't wake up the next day. There was
Yeah.
some like properly disappointing and heartbreaking things that went on. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I wanted to kind of say, come on now. The TED Talk thing, in the grand scheme of stuff, when
Yes,
I'm
in the
doing up
grand scheme of
myself,
it, exactly what I was thinking.
like,
You
who
know?
cares? I was going to say it another way then, but I won't swear. But like, who cares? Like, who
Yeah.
really cares? It was
Yeah.
just something that, and I think if we can get used to like adding a proper context to our life, it won't stop us from doing the things that we want to do.
Oh, that is 100%, 100%. That's why I have always been somebody who takes risks. Now, I know that's part of ADHD behavior too, because our brain has less inhibitions for it. But I actually analysed myself and looked at that. And one of the reasons I like to take risks is because, do you know what? Sometimes I feel responsible. I
Mm.
don't know where this comes from, but I feel responsible for people who are struggling to just take that first step, dip their toe in, right? And I just think, I'm a warm, kind-hearted, compassionate person. If I can help, I really want to help, but I don't want them to feel that I'm looking down on them or I'm better than them by offering to help or anything like that. Because I also know that many people, many of us, we struggle with that too, right? Accepting help. And so I am that person who will do things first, because then what happens is I will say it from this perspective. I say, right, I'm going to do this first. This is what I'm going to have a go at. So it could work, it might not. Now, therefore, I've taken the pressure off myself straight away. But also, I've added in a caveat saying, right, well, after I've done it, you can now analyze it and then make it look all good and nice and shiny and safe for everybody else, because you can dissect it. Because after that, I've done it. I've lost the motivation. Now I'm on to something else. And unless you put me in charge of making it great for everyone, which I'm not going to do, because you are, quite frankly, how can you? You know, we all have to find our way, but quite often there's this whole big thing out there about being a leader and being, doing this. And I love that. I love, let's be honest here. For me to be able to make an impact on somebody with something I say, oh my gosh, it warms the cockles of my heart. It really, really does, because I've learned so much from other people. And I tell them as well, because I think it's important that we know. And we don't always know. But I just think if we can help and if we can do something, then let's just do it, because who cares what people think of us? It's actually not our business what they think of us. We might not like it. In fact, if you think every single person in the world is going to like you, then you're a fool. Seriously. And I'm going to just say it here. You are a fool, because quite frankly, I don't like everyone. So therefore, by default, how could everyone possibly like me? And I know lots of people don't. But
this is the thing.
It's growth.
It's important. And one of the things you talked about inside that was leadership. I think what people forget is leadership, yes, it can be about leading other people, but it's the ability to lead ourselves. And when we are putting ourselves out there, waiting for validation or approval, if we're not leading ourselves within that, you're blown by whatever people say, but say of you. You expect everyone to like you. It's heartbreaking when they don't. And, it doesn't take 12 hours to get over the fact of a TED Talk, for example. It takes you 10 years and you never public speak again and all of that. It's important to lead ourselves as well as leading others or leading our brands or leading the way in something. And people like you, in my opinion, you have mastered the art of that through any way, shape or form, but a lot of people haven't. And you see it play out online sometimes in an ugly way, don't you?
I feel quite privileged to have worked it out, because I know a lot of people haven't. And I look up to people who perhaps worked it out before me, whatever suits me. But I think going back to sort of tying it back in, as we started out with the core values, I said at the start, it was honesty, respect, acceptance, and fun. And I think we literally demonstrated all four of those. So we've had honesty. We've talked about honesty without even using the word honesty. We've respected each other's stories. We've respected each other's situations. And I believe that both of us here have a great respect for other people regardless. And most people do, in fairness, most people do. The acceptance bit, now that's trickier. That's one of the core values, which I think you don't just suddenly say you're going to have. You don't have that as a kid or in your 20s or growing up. That's something that I had to learn and bring on myself. But we have had a natural acceptance in this conversation of our thought processes, our perspectives. We've looked for common ground, and equally so, we've shown different perspectives as well. And that's because we accept. But like you said, it's about accepting who we are. I accept I need external validation, because that helps motivate me. Now, whether it's inspiration or validation, I do have a lot of times where I need external validation to boost me up, and I will actively look for it. How I look for it now, Jenny, is completely different to how I looked for it 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, right? Completely different, because I have actively tried to grow to be a better person, because I didn't want people to think I was not a good person. It was that fear again. So fears can be helpful. They can be handy to motivate us to do something better, to grow. And that led to having the fun brought in. I think we've had fun. We've talked about fun times.
I
I'm
was
never going to get
just
that
on
image of
those
you in
comments.
a parka out of my mind ever. Honestly, never going. That's going to just make me chuckle, you know.
Same.
And we've brought it round, and that's what it is, isn't it? I have to look at my core values. That my core values now help me feel aligned to what I'm doing, and I don't have good days every day, but I try and make sure I have the best days I can. And then when I go to bed, I go, okay, well, what was good and what did happen today? And do you know that simple little thing at the end of the day, if I just make myself think by habit, it's a habit now. Okay, what was one really good thing about today? What went well? Even if it's a TV show I've watched that actually made me laugh and I've got, I'm really looking forward to seeing the next episode tomorrow. That's enough, isn't it? Because it releases those hormones that make your brain think, well, all is okay with the world, and hopefully you can get a good night's sleep.
I love that. You know, this expression that everyone keeps going, I'm living my best life. And it's funny because people will say that and then they'll whack up a picture of their Porsche or their big house or their mansion. I think the fact that we get to do this, the fact that we get to laugh about me getting stuck. I was allowed, and you might edit it out, I don't know, but I was allowed to go, oh my gosh, that just sounded so wrong. I've just made myself laugh and move on with it. A lot of people don't get that in their working day. People might
they don't.
HR or told you're not acting appropriately or, then feeling bad about themselves. We get to do this every day. So the other thing that I think about as well, and I think, I don't know if you agree with this, entrepreneurship is like a full contact sport and it can be tough.
That is the best expression I have heard. Seriously. It is. It actually is. Oh my God. And I was a wrestler in the day, so I know about contact sport. You are right.
I have never been a wrestler, so you know what? One of the abilities, people talk about tenacity and all of that, but one of our abilities to navigate the tough times is when we've had a really tough day and we can still find the good in it. I'm still here. Well, I got to drink a glass of my favorite apple juice. Whatever that thing is, if we can look for our best lives, even when I'm going to do something that you would only see on video, I keep doing this to people, but it's like, it's living this duality of the allegedly great thing, the allegedly bad thing, and living with both of those, walking with both of those at the same time, and finding the gratitude in the great thing, which is easier, and finding the gratitude in the not so great thing, because it's that gives us our victory lap, That's what
it does.
It's so important.
It is. And when Jenny was saying this and that, she was literally just waving her hands at me, balancing her hands at me, listeners, as
scales.
if a set of weighing scales.
You're going to have to keep that, what it is, isn't it? Say, what is Jenny talking about when she's doing this?
Yeah. So hopefully, see, we've got it all going on here. Oh, Jenny, do you know what? This has just been amazing. It's been fantastic. If you're having real conversations, I truly believe you never run out of things to say. And, the only way you can have good conversations is to go out there and find people, do things, have things to talk about. That's what's, whether it's a book or a course or an event, a TV show you watch, anything, having a conversation and connecting with others, like-minded others, is truly good for the soul. And I have to say this just to end with, I was in a group recently and there was somebody in there who grated on me. And I felt myself thinking, why is that? Because it didn't make me cross, angry, whatever. I just thought, why is that? What is it that's irritating? And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to have to really get to know this person properly to find out what it is, why. And we're now really great friends, because I just thought, I like her. I don't dislike this person. What is it? Now, 20, 30 years ago, I'd have shied away. But we've had some fantastic conversations. And sometimes, you know what? Just get over yourself.
So true. So true.
Jenny, Visibility Queen, thank you for being here. Thank you for being on Behind the Strategy with me, with ADHD perspectives as well. You are marvellous as always. And I'm going to get you booked in for round 3 at some point, surely.
Oh, yes, please. That would be great. More of this. And thank you for allowing me to be me on this and having such a laugh. I think if there's any takeaway on this, find your fun. It doesn't
Yes.
mean you have to now show up on camera or show up online and be funny. Find your fun, even if it's like a secret friend that you kind of can have a good laugh with. It's so important because otherwise we take stuff so seriously, don't we?
We do. And it's like the Boomtown Rats sang, I don't like Mondays. And everybody's like, oh, God, Monday, back to work. And actually, that's a shame, isn't it? So, Jenny, tell me, what do you like about Mondays?
I love Mondays. It's like, now some people might disagree. My mum thinks a week starts on a Sunday. I'm like, no, it starts on a Monday. So it's like September at school. When you go back to school, you get a brand new exercise book and you get to open the fresh page, stick your stickers on the front, write your name in bubble writing. There's a freshness to Monday. It's like, and I know every day we can have a reset, but Monday, for me, it's like, what magic is going to happen? What are the opportunities, the possibilities, and a bit of excitement of, oh, let's see where this thing's going to come from. So I love Mondays.
Brilliant. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Behind the Strategy. I hope you enjoy listening to the next one. Please subscribe so you get notified of when that's published. And if you'd like to find out more, please pop over to thestrategysuccesslab.com. And please do share this with anyone who you think might need this today.